Hey guys, welcome to episode 2 of Rad Talk, where sports and medicine collide. I'm Gage, and that's
I'm
Dennis.
Dennis.
Today's episode, we're gonna get a little spicy here. We'll start with our first thoughts, our thoughts on the end of round one, beginning of round two for the NBA playoffs. Then we're gonna start. I guess he called it a new segment. Kind of excited. Dennis is gonna teach us about his experience with traveling, specifically traveling. He's a travel ultrasound tech. And then lastly, probably what I'm most excited for, we're going to end with a little segment where we get to answer. Dennis and I are going to answer a couple questions, kind of let you guys into our lives a little bit. So we'll go ahead and start with our thoughts on the end of round one. I know all but two of the series are over. We have two games tonight. First, I think the Warriors play the Kings. I think that's the first game.
Yep.
I don't expect anything life-changing. We talked off the camera. Golden State's a much different team at home. So the fact that they're absolutely garbage on the road. So the fact that they won Game 5 in Sacramento tells me that this series is over. I think they win tonight. I think they win. We'll do the segment at the end, but I think they win fairly easily. So
now they're favored by 7.5. They're favored by 7.5. Are we doing the spread?
So yeah, we're going to do a little segment. Came up with a name called Pick 'em Wickham. So what we're going to do is we'll pick the winner. I think we could pick straight up, and then for Pick 'em Wickham, we'll give you guys. We use FanDuel, so we use the spread that they have currently. So for that game, Dennis already mentioned the Warriors are favored by 7.5. If I were going to bet on this game, I would take. I think Warriors are going to win by more than 7.5.
Yeah, I think so too. I think maybe. I think I would take Sacramento if the pick'em wise, because I think they're gonna win by like.
So 6. You think Golden State wins, but it's by less than 7.5?
Yeah, I think so. I think I'm gonna say 6.
Yeah, I think Golden State. I think this is like a 15-point blowout. Like I don't think Sacramento's going to show up at all. So then, leading in, so the second game then would be Memphis versus LA. This has been an interesting series. You know, the Grizzlies drastically underperformed for the first 4 games. Oddly enough, the only game they won up until the last one was the one where John Morant didn't play. So game 5 was close for the most part, right?
Yeah. It was. It ended up being a blowout. I mean,
Yeah, I think there was a stretch.
LeBron just didn't show. He was just, I don't know, he just wanted to take a break or what happened.
He was out of it.
Yeah. Which they really need to win because he needs a break. I mean, at 38 years old, he needs more rest than anything.
This is the first time I've ever watched him, and I'm like, man, you can tell that he's 38. Like, he's slowing down.
They threw a lob or something, and like he caught it and just laid it in. And I was like, man, like 5 years ago, he would have just slammed. He still slammed it
at home.
Yeah, I mean, you wouldn't even have thought to catch him late.
I think the frustrating thing is he's the reason I started watching basketball, when I was, 2003, so I was a 13-year-old. But the frustrating thing to watch is he just picks and chooses when to, and maybe it's because he's older now, but he picks and chooses when he wants to play, when he doesn't want to play. In terms of like in the actual game, you can see him conserving his energy during certain parts of the game, and it's frustrating to watch. Sometimes I wish he would just play less, but play harder in the minutes that he does play, instead of playing 45 minutes and just not being there for some of the time.
Right. Side note, LeBron and the 2 games we're talking about, LeBron and Steph Curry were both born in the same hospital, not too far where I'm from, in Akron, Ohio. So anyways, continue.
I think the key for me tonight would be Anthony Davis. He's been up and down. I think he played okay in Game 5, but he really has to play well. I know Jaren Jackson won Defensive Player of the Year, but I don't think that's really an excuse for AD. AD's the better player, so I think he needs to play well tonight. And another player that's been kind of disappointing is D'Lo. He hasn't played very well this series.
Right.
So
we'll see how they do at home. We'll see.
Yeah, and Desmond Bane has played out of his mind the last couple games, so we'll see if he continues to do that. Dylan Brooks has been absolute hot garbage. So we'll see if he turns it around. John Morant, I'm sure, will play well. He almost always plays well. But With all that being said, give me your straight pick first before we do pick 'em Wickham.
Yeah, for sure. Straight pick. Obviously, I'm going to take Golden State. I'm going to take the Lakers to finish the series out. And are we going to the Saturday Sunday games as well?
So we will. I'm gonna take the Lakers as well. But the question is, would you take what I say 2.5? You gonna take the points or leave them?
I think that
it's 4.5. So LA's favored by 4.5.
Right. Yeah, I would say that. I would take the points too because I think LA's gonna. I think they're gonna come out and beat them by more than 4.5. I think they'll beat them by 5.
I agree. I would take the points as well.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so that means that's the end of round. Every other series is done in round 1. Obviously, there was the only surprise to me, to anyone, is going to be that Milwaukee lost to Miami in round 1. That's the only surprise. Everything else, I think, to me, I'm surprised that Cleveland lost the way they did. I'm not surprised they lost. I'm surprised it was 4-1.
Yeah.
Everything else, I think, Boston struggled a little bit with Atlanta. But so with the games tonight, we both think they're over. That would be the end of round 1. So now we'll get into round 2. So the first game, I'll just go through. I think on Sunday, the Knicks and the Heat will play each other.
Right.
So there's one of your Eastern Conference games. Yep. So we can start with them.
Yeah, sure.
So give me your thoughts on the Knicks Heat.
I think, Jalen Brunson's a monster, obviously. And Josh Hart, they've been playing so well. They've been playing much better than I think everybody anticipated, especially how they handled Cleveland. But then there's playoff Jimmy that's coming out. And I think that I'll do the straight pick is I think that the Heat will win this series. Specifically for tonight's game, I think, for Sunday's game, I think the Knicks are favored by 4, and so I think the Knicks will. I think the Heat get one of the first 2, and then, but I think the first game I would roll with New York. I think New York will come out at Madison Square Garden and they're going to try to make a statement. I think they'll get that one, but I think then they'll relax, and then that'll allow the Heat to kind of steal some games. So give me the Heat in. Give me the Heat in 6.
Okay, so you want the Heat? Wow. All right. So for similar, I'm going to go the opposite. I think the Knicks win the series. I think it's 7 games. I think the Knicks win tonight, Sunday. I would take the points, so I would take the Knicks by more than 4. I think they cover. I think the Knicks, they're kind of opposite teams, right? So the Knicks are a team. You can tell they play really well together. The biggest issue with the Knicks currently is Julius Randle didn't play well last series, and now he's actually injured. He twisted his ankle in the last game, so we'll see if he's even ready for game 1 or this series at all. And then playoff Jimmy is a real thing, but the Heat are extremely reliant on playoff Jimmy. Extremely reliant.
Yeah, they can't score. They struggle to score.
This is 07 LeBron Cavs, right? Like they're extremely reliant on one person, and eventually it's going to catch up to them. And I happen to think it's going to be this round against the Knicks. I think it was a good was a perfect storm, I guess is the word, against the Bucks. He played well. The Bucks just collapsed. They were up double digits in both of those games, 4 and 5, and they just collapsed. So the Heat shouldn't have made it out of round 1. So now I don't think they make it out of round 2. But I think it'd be a good series.
Yeah, I think the Heat's defense. Obviously, the Knicks can score a lot better. The Heat they can't score. Their offense is, like you said, completely relying on Jimmy Butler. If Jimmy Butler is scoring and hitting all these crazy shots that he can hit, apparently, then the offense rolls. Otherwise, they can't get the ball in the bucket. So we'll see if their defense can really hammer down on the Knicks.
If Julius Randle doesn't play, maybe it's a different story. Or if what's his name, Tyler Hero got injured last round, so I doubt he plays this round. If they had him, maybe it's a different story. But I agree. I think the Heat struggle to score, and I think it's going to catch up to them. Okay, so we're going to stick in the Eastern Conference. Is that all right with you?
Yep, sounds good, man.
All right, let's do it's Boston versus Philly. This will be the good one. assuming everyone's healthy.
Right.
So, well, give me your thoughts on the series overall to start.
I think that Boston, from watching them how they played last series, how they should have swept Miami or how they should have swept Atlanta. I don't have any idea how. I want to take Philly because Boston should have swept Atlanta. So it's like, what is it going on? So I think I'm going to take, let's see here, game one, Philly or Boston's. It's in Boston, game one. They're favored by 7.5. I think
Boston is.
Yep. Boston's favored by 7.5, game one. So I think if Joel and everybody's healthy on Philadelphia, give me Philly. I mean, I'll take Philly, and I think it would go 6 or 7.
So that being 7.5 favorites tells me Vegas thinks that Joel is not going to be healthy.
Yeah,
that's a healthy spread for game one against two teams that should be fairly evenly matched.
Right.
Okay, so say it again. You took Boston.
I take Philly. I'll take Philly game one. But I'll take Philly
game one.
Okay. Just because I think games? That give me, man, if they're healthy, give me. I think I've got to say 7. Give me 7.
Yeah, that's fair.
It's going to be so close. I mean, if Joel is healthy, like I think, and I think if Boston does lose the series, I think they need to really look at their team and either blow some things up and trade some parts. But that's for a different talk. So yeah.
Okay, so we're actually going to be opposite again on this one. I am going to take Boston. 7 points though. If Joel Embiid doesn't play, give me the points. But if he's playing, I'm not taking. I would take Philly to cover.
Yeah.
You're right. Boston played poorly. I mean, they won 6. They should have swept Atlanta.
Sure.
But I don't think Joel Embiid's going to be healthy based off of some of the stuff I've read. Even if he does play, he's not going to be fully healthy. So I'm going to take Boston. I'll say Boston in 6. And no Embiid. If he plays, I'll take Boston, but I don't think they cover for game one.
Okay. That's good. That's fair. And so we have the last game that we have to look at would be the game tomorrow, and that's a Western Conference team. That would be Phoenix and Denver.
Yeah, this is the more interesting of the two. Likely, the two series in the West.
Right.
You know how I feel about. You know how I'm going to pick. You know how I feel about Phoenix. I think Kevin Durant's a stud. They're loaded. Devin Booker's a stud. So I think Phoenix is going to win the whole thing. So obviously I have them beating Denver. They don't have home court, so maybe it goes 7. I don't know what the spread is. I do think Denver will win game one.
Spread game one, Denver's favored by 2.5.
I would take Denver and the points. I mean, Phoenix couldn't beat LA at home. In round one without Paul George, so I think Phoenix loses again game one.
Right,
but I think they take the whole series, 7 games.
I think they're just so top heavy. Was LeBron's statement when he made, we're top heavy is whatever it was. I think the Joker is not going to win MVP regular season this year. I think it's going to go to Joel, and I think this is also going to be the season that they progress up. Give me Denver. Give me Denver in 7 to take out Phoenix. I just don't trust Chris Paul's body to hold up. I don't trust Kevin Durant's body to hold up.
Yeah.
And I think that's going to little ticky-tack things. And I think Denver's more physical. And I think that physical game is going to also put a toll on to the Phoenix Suns.
Yeah, the key to Denver is going to be Jamal Murray. I think if he returns to 2020 bubble, Jamal Murray, the Denver could be an issue. But give me Phoenix.
Yeah, I think we'll see what happens. We'll see.
Since we predicted, let's just do the last one. Since we predicted both series end tonight, we said the Lakers are going to win, the Warriors are going to win. That means they're going to play each other in the next round.
Right.
I think this is probably the easiest of the 4 to pick. I I'm shocked that LA won this round.
Yeah, I'm not shocked.
I think Golden State would win. I'll give them 6 games, if maybe. I think Golden State wins in 6 because they're going to have home court, right? So they don't have to. They're terrible on the road, but that's going to be limited since they have home court. I think the Lakers. I don't know. I just don't trust them. So I don't know what the spread will be, but I would likely take the Warriors to win Game 1 and cover the spread just because they're lights out at home. And I would take them to win the series in 6.
That's probably a safe bet. It's tough because like I don't know, for some reason I love both teams. I love Stephen Curry.
That's because they grew up in Ohio.
Yeah, homegrown, right?
Yeah.
And so I think I would be rooting as a fan for Golden State. But I would love to see a good series. I think like you, I think ultimately if you push comes to shove, I'm going to take the Warriors in 6 just because they're so good at home. They're a completely different team at home.
Yeah.
And to have home court advantage and have Game 6 in home. I mean, they might clean it up sooner if they can win a road game.
Yeah.
But I think they're going to have issues with Anthony Davis.
Everybody does.
Kevon Looney might be able to do some things, but I think that shooting, spreading the floor. I mean, yeah, I'm with you. One of the things that we agree on, I guess, is we'll take Warriors in 6.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Okay, so I think that'll end our first segment. We'll see how those picks turn out. I'm looking forward to watching those games. But
sure.
So let's go ahead and get into the second. The segment I think you're probably a little more excited for here, and I think our listeners would be more excited.
Yeah.
So what we're going to do is, I think we explained last episode, but Dennis is a travel tech for ultrasound. He's been doing it for a while, so we're going to let him kind of speak some facts and give us some information about the basics of travel healthcare.
For sure. So I think I'm just going to start off. I've been traveling as a sonographer and radiology for about, I think, going on 6 years at this point. I've been all over the country, all over the world. I've been to Guam. I've been in a lot of different states. I think I would have to even count. I'm not even sure how many states I've been to. If somebody, I guess I'm just kind of give you guys like a generalization and we'll go into more detail in episodes down the road. Kind of why I started doing this was I had a girlfriend at the time who had started doing travel. She was a nurse, started doing traveling nursing, and she kind of said it's something that she would want to test the waters in. And I was up for a change, and I actually got my first travel job while I was in Belize on vacation. I got a phone call from the manager of the department, a job that I had applied with a company. And he was like, he knew, I told my recruiter that, hey, I'm in Belize, but I have Wi-Fi at my Airbnb. And he called me and was like, I hear you're in Belize. Like, what are you doing applying for a job while you're on vacation there? And I was like, well, I'm just looking
to make money.
Yeah, I got to make money. I look for my first gig. I'm got to pay for this vacation somehow. And so I accepted that job and we bought a camper and a truck and we were off to our first gig in Illinois. I think that if I was to give a tip to somebody who wants to get into it, I think their first bet is to find various companies that you're willing to work with, find a recruiter that seems semi-knowledgeable, that you can deal talking to, because it becomes a texting, email relationship that you have with your recruiter quite a bit. And so you really want to make sure it's somebody you can get along with. Now you have to be mindful that I know a lot of folks who become friends with the recruiters, which is great. You have a free friend, but it's also a business relationship. And so the recruiter, depending on what company they work for, they can make money with the more clients they have. And so, they're your friend, but they're also making money off you staying with them. And so you have to make sure that it's conducive for you to stay with them versus going with another company that might have a specific job, which I'll go into the details. Certain companies only sometimes have certain jobs at certain hospitals. And then if that company allows another company to have that job, then they take a piece of the pie. And so you could be losing money by working with a certain company that's having to pay another one for that particular job at that hospital. A lot of little intricacies that deal with this kind of stuff.
So I know you said you had a girlfriend at the time that she was already traveling.
Right.
Had you heard anything about traveling before you met her?
No,
were you an ultrasound tech before you met her?
Yeah.
Okay, so you knew. So had you heard anything about traveling before you met her?
I had a buddy of mine in radiology had dabbled and talked about traveling. We didn't know anything about it. Obviously, it's exploded recently.
Mm-hmm.
And
Yeah.
so, but when I was looking into it, I was like watching nurses' videos and like just trying to find different information, salaries and benefits and different, who to work with, who not to work with. And it was very, I'm biased, but I think it was very scarce at that time. It was just 6 years ago. And so like I had thought about it and I had actually talked to recruiting companies, and they would tell me different things. And I was fairly new at doing sonography as well. And so that was kind of I wasn't sure if I was going to be like it was good enough to make the leap to going into different hospitals and being like, okay, run, and keep up with everybody else and have those expectations. And so I had known about it. But then once she decided she was miserable or didn't want to be where she was at, and made that leap. She was able to travel. It was about, I think it was 2.5 hours from where she was staying at the time. And so she was able to kind of travel, but far enough to where she could still make it home because she was working 3 days a week. So she could get 4 days off. And so I saw her dipping her feet and like enjoying it and being like, wow, like I could see so many places, meet so many people, and probably get better at doing this than just staying at this one place and then trying to climb the ladder. Because that was my game plan initially, was to stay there and try to kind of get my master's and get into the business side and climb the ladder of management. And then when she was like, I want to do this, and I was like, let's do it. And then she was like, let's get a camper. Let's, and she had all these ideas, and I was like, that sounds crazy, but let's do it. Like, and it was probably one of the coolest things that I got to be a part of and got to do. Traveling, it's like a retirement thing. Like you hear all like the older folks like, I'm 65, I'm going to buy a camper and just like travel the world. And I was like, okay, well, I'm going to do this and I'm going to work while I do it. And to be able to go to different hospitals, not working remotely, but being able to go there and just see the areas. And it was an experience. It was just great. And then getting to meet a lot of different other sonographers or techs or radiologists and work with all these people that are really smart, and learning from them and learning from each other. Building those relationships were awesome. Also the protocols that you work from hospital to hospital, you're like, you go to a different hospital and you kind of just have to blend in and like remember how they want things done. And that can be a hard thing to do. I mean, it's all these little intricacies of being part of a traveler, which is something I'm going to touch on our next one of our future episodes. Just kind of lead you along here is pay, and how you can look into your per diem pay if you have a permanent house in the state that you reside. And no way am I a tax professional, so I consult your tax professionals, but I can give you a little bit insight into the travel world. We're going to go, I think, episode by episode, and I'm going to touch on each detail of that. But I think this was kind of an interesting question, was with you, Gage, working with different travelers, being a radiologist and knowing that like there's a traveler in X-ray, there's a traveler in CT, there's a traveler in ultrasound. I mean, how that coincides with working with you. And I know as a sonographer, we work hand in hand, maybe more than other parts of radiology. But you're still doing procedures and IR stuff with different modalities. And you go into these places and it's some traveler and you have to trust that they know what they're doing. And I'm sure that's kind of like I don't know how Rad feels about that. I know,
that's where you kind of hope the hiring, whoever does the hiring, kind of did their job, did their homework, because it varies. I've experienced, usually, I think only ultrasound and X-ray are the biggest for me, where I've experienced travelers. Because like you said, we work with those two the most because they do procedures. We do procedures with you guys. So they do have traveling CT and MR techs, but that's less. I don't deal with them because they just kind of acquire the images and we don't really interact with them. Right. So you kind of hope the recruiting person did their homework, because in my experience, it's a mixed bag. Some of the travelers are really good, and then obviously some of them are not great. So if they're good, it's obviously makes your job a lot easier. And it's different because some of them are, especially on the X-ray side of things, they do, like you said, protocols. They do things differently at either their home hospital or where they came from, compared to how we do it where we're at now. So if they're not used to things, you kind of have to, teach them a little bit, which can, slow you down a little bit. But once they pick up things, the good ones pick it up fast, and then it's off to the races, just like it would be with a normal tech that's been there. They're obviously not going to know the small details of the hospital as well as the techs that have been there for, forever.
Right.
But I think it's been highly variable. Most of the traveling techs I've interacted with have been good. But it's definitely variable.
Yeah, that's the different perspective, and I've worked with different radiologists, and they want things done a certain way, and you're like, okay, like I've got to like not do like something simple, like where I've worked at a facility where we're doing a right upper quadrant ultrasound, and we don't include the kidney on some of right upper quadrants, we don't include the pancreas on some right upper quadrants, and then other places where if you're looking for a gallbladder, we only do one organ. And so you're like, okay, I'm doing a right upper quadrant, but I'm only looking for this particular organ, and that's the only thing that I do. And so it's just little things like that you just got to kind of roll with constantly. And the doctors make the protocols, and so you have to kind of, as me as a sonographer, I have to follow along with people like you who want us to do it the way that you wanted to do it, based on whatever you guys have come up with. And so, I think working in the department as a traveler is kind of cool, because you don't have to worry about the drama of the departments. You don't have to worry about the cat fights or the whatever is going on. And so I'm there to do a job, and I can go off and kind of hang out and do my own thing, and just get by, because most contracts are typically anywhere from 8 to 13 weeks. 13 is kind of the norm. 26 weeks is if they're like, they really know they're going to need you for a while. And then they're, overseas in Guam or other countries, you can look up to almost a year, full contracts, just because they know that like we need people here, and we don't have any schools around here. And the longer I can keep you here, the better for our hospital. And so, that's kind of nice to not have the drama. But then on the flip side, is you typically make a little bit more money, but you are by yourself. You don't have any friends, you don't have any family. And so you have to really get comfortable doing things alone. Or if you get lucky and you find like a cool apartment that's like willing to meet you out for trivia nights or different things like that, which I've gotten lucky in certain places. And then other places it was like, nobody wants to do anything ever. They're just hang out with their family and their friends. And you're like, hey, you want to do this? And they're like, no, I don't want to do that. I'd rather stay home. And then they end up like going out together, and you don't get invited or something. Which is kind of, it's who you know, and you get comfortable with who you're with. And so that's just the way it is.
So 6 years ago, you kind of made the decision, hey, let's do this. And you mentioned a little bit about this, but for someone that's in your shoes, your shoes 6 years ago, where do they go? Like, how do they start looking, and where can they find reliable and decent information about what it takes and what it's like to be a traveler?
Right. I think your first thing you want to do is probably send an email to radtalkwithdg@gmail.com.
And we have an expert on staff,
right? And ask us any questions that we can. We'd love to help you with that. But I think the first thing you do is you Google various companies. You want to look for probably 3. I would say go with 3, which is a pain in the neck, because each company wants 3 references typically, and so you have to find 3 different people. For every company, 3. So you got 9 people that have to give you references, which is kind of be a hard time, to sometimes find 9 people that want to give you a reference. And so, but I think that's important, because like I said earlier, certain companies only work sometimes with certain hospitals. And so if you have a, X company that only works for, this hospital in North Carolina, and that's where you want to go, if you're not signed up with that particular company, you'll never know that job exists. And that's happened before with me on certain companies that I hadn't worked for before. And I randomly was on Facebook scouring, and somebody said they're hiring, and I reach out to the companies that I work for, and they say, we don't have those jobs. None of them had that job. And so the individual who had posted, luckily had posted on Facebook, I reached out to, and they said, yeah, we're hiring, but they only work with this particular company. And so they were lucky enough to have, sometimes I've had that company reach out to me and say, hey, this usually doesn't happen, but the manager knew somebody who you mentioned to on Facebook, and they would like to interview you. And so we're reaching out to you. This is kind of a weird happenstance. That doesn't happen too often, but that's another way. You're just kind of, so you're guessing. So I think that sometimes smaller companies pay a little bit more because they don't have, they know they can't keep up with certain contracts that more companies have, but also them paying more kind of hurts them. It hurts their bottom line because they're probably having to pay those bigger companies. And I'm getting all the business side details here. They have to pay those bigger companies a certain percentage to be allowed to have that job. And so as you start out, the companies will allow you to be, they'll give you a certain amount of jobs. And then as you grow as a company, they'll give you more jobs. The more people you can fill in those positions, then they allow you to have more jobs. But you're also, that company's getting charged, which could hurt your bottom line too. And so you have to be mindful of that. There's lots of apps out there, which I'll go over the apps that actually compare. Literally, you can see, job in Illinois versus same job in Illinois, and the pay discrepancies from one company to the other. Because some companies' bottom line might be, we need to make 45% off of that traveler or that job, and the other companies might be, we can take 30% off of that particular traveler job. And so that gives you more in your pocket. And so you can see those pay discrepancies, which could be hundreds, maybe thousands of dollars a month.
Yeah.
It's huge. And this can go super deep. And I think me and Gage are going to definitely dive much deeper into these. Look forward to how we'll label the episodes appropriately so you can see what questions you have, and we can hit those. And again, shoot us an email on social media, and we can.
I think we can. So we find the companies, right? Then what happens when you find a company that you're? I'm assuming that you, by company you mean recruiter.
Yeah. So
so what happens when you find the recruiter that you're ready to work for, work with, or whatever?
Right. So I'll just throw like a big one out there. Medical Solutions is a really big company, and so you would go to their website. We're not sponsored by Medical Solutions at all, but this is just an example. You'd go to their website, you'd sign up, you'd make your profile, you would, put all your job stuff as you're literally applying for a job. You put your references in there. A recruiter will contact you, and you kind of tell them, where do you want to go? What are you looking for? What's important to you? Is pay? They want to know, is pay important to you? It's like you're buying a car. Do I really want a fast car? Do I want a family car? And so the recruiter's gonna say, what's important? And so you say, if pay is important to you, okay, then let's look here. If location's important to you, then okay, we're gonna look where you want to go, obviously. If the sun's important to you and you're like, I want to be out on the beach, and so okay, then we're gonna focus on that. If you say, I just want to go somewhere, anywhere, then I think that's harder for them, because it's just like they're just going to constantly like throwing a lot of jobs at you. And it's some places, some recruiting companies, you go online and you actually click like, I'm interested. And then when you click I'm interested, it automatically sends your pre-made profile to that particular employer, to the recruiter, who will then forward it to the employer. And then they can make the decision to bring you in for an interview, or however they want to do it. Other recruiting companies, they will text you or email you, however you want it set up, when they get new jobs. And so if they get something new, they'll shoot you in a message, and you say yes or no. They'll tell you the pay package. They'll tell you the call. They'll tell you everything like that, and as much as information that they're told. And then you decide yay or nay. And then the next step is, I think you pick several different places, because a lot of times you don't get, if I apply for one job in Los Angeles, it might be a lot of people applying for that same job. And so you might not even get an interview for that job, because they look at, they're going to look through your resume and compare it to everybody else's resume. And so as a sonographer, you can differentiate yourself with obviously your level of degree. If you have a bachelor's degree, or you have, that might be looked at differently with the recruiter. If you, it can be looked at like, or with the hiring manager, excuse me. If that particular hiring manager maybe went to the same school as you, they might be more apt to bring you in. And also with sonography specifically, your registries. And so sonography has a wide range of various registries, from abdomen, OBGYN, to musculoskeletal, to pediatrics, to breast, all of these different things. And so if they look at somebody's resume and they say, wow, like they have a lot of registries, or they need somebody who, they're like, we know we need somebody who's registered in vascular. And so if you're registered in vascular, they can throw out everybody else who is not. And so you can help yourself by getting more registries. I think that's, and then you go through your interview, and that's when they're going to call you. And the interviews are a very unique process, because typically an interview, they bring you in and you meet people, and they show you the department, and they talk to you, and you're both interviewing each other, which I think we're both interviewing each other in this instance, but I think you're more interviewing them, because if they're calling you for an interview, it's like, do you want to be here? We've looked at your resume, we've looked at the recruiter, we've looked at your stuff. Usually at the end of the interview, they're like, well, okay, well, we'll get back to you when the offer letter's in. Like, if you get the interview, the job is, from what I've experienced, the job is typically coming. I haven't had many of interviews that like they didn't make an offer. And sometimes, and usually the offer should be what you anticipated, because the recruiting company has all that information already. And so you're just like, sometimes things go really fast. Sometimes I've put it in, and like I get a phone call that day. And then the other jobs that I put in for, because usually I apply for multiple, I'll get a phone call the next day, or the following day, or a week from then. And then it's kind of sucks, because if you've taken one, then you have to talking to all these other managers, that you have to say, sorry, like I just took one 2 days ago, 3 days ago. And you're like, gosh darn it. Like, I hope it doesn't like ruin my chances with them. And I think that's always something that, if you want a little like tidbit from thing, I always throw in there with the managers and say, like, hopefully this doesn't like ruin our opportunity for possibly work together in the future. You missed me by a day. Like, I've already given my word to be somewhere else. But if you still have that need in 13 weeks, when I'm done here, maybe we can do something in the future. You have my phone number, we can, and usually like, I think that works really well. I've reached out to people in the past that literally I turned down a job, and then was like, they still needed a need, and was able to like either help fill that need, or find somebody else to help fill that need, or like things like that. It works out really good. Also, there's great referral bonuses. So if you decide to apply for a job, if you want to put my name down, I think I've worked for like 4 or 5, 6 companies or something like that.
Shameless plug.
Yeah, shameless plug. I'll take your referral bonus. I'll take your referral bonus. Thank you. And so, and I think we'll, like I said before, we're going to go into pay. You want to know how to find out how much you're going to get paid. I can go over the intricacies of that, how the breakdown is for your per diems, your housing, your meals, your lodging, your incidentals.
I didn't realize how much there was that went into this stuff.
It's immaculate. And, I got the opportunity to kind of work and learn with a company while I was in Illinois that taught me their business, because they actually had nurses that worked for them. And so they just taught me the intricacies of this business, which was an awesome thing. Like, first contract, I get to meet people who own the company, willing to teach me this stuff. And I'm just like, this is like the best. It's like it's like you're the Wizard of Oz, and you're the guy behind the mirror. Like you're the all-knowing person. And so to know both sides, you can understand both things. And I actually, my first recruiter, I did make friends with, and I did actually meet up with him at one point in Las Vegas. I still keep in contact with him. He's no longer recruiting, but he was a super straight shooter and would tell me different, which I'll tell you, this is another little thing we'll talk about, bill rates. And so the bill rate is what the hospital and the recruiting company get. And usually that's the piece of the pie. Say the bill rate is, just throwing out a number, $100 an hour, $200 an hour. And so that's the piece of the pie that they divvy up amongst the recruiting company and you as the traveler. And so knowing that bill rate is, I've had hospitals, managers that knew the bill rate and would tell me the bill rate. And then talk about a negotiating tool.
Yeah.
It's like you're, example for Gage, if you're a radiologist and you come in there and they say, well, we're willing to pay you X amount of dollars a year, and they tell you the absolute max that they can go.
Yeah.
And you're like, okay, like you've given me the first number. And so like, now I know where I can go. And I think that's a huge, huge thing too, that managers do, that is really nice for us travelers to be able to bank some more money. Is a negotiating tool. I'm looking here to see everything I wanted to touch on.
I think we got, so up to this point, we got, why you did it, right. How you went about it. So we talked about, how you get involved. We talked about, how to apply.
Right.
So I think at this point, let's just say we've had the interview, right, and we got the job. Right. So I think in the next episode we can start with like what happens, after you get the job.
Yeah.
And then we can pick whatever you want to talk about, whether it's pay or like what happens when you actually show up on day one to these new hospitals. Assuming you don't know anybody, it's probably a very, it's kind of like when we start residency, we don't really know anyone. You don't know the people we're working with, so it can be intimidating.
Yeah, for sure. And you're dealing with a lot of like people who've been there for a while, or people who have got their ways of doing things. And then what's really, something I'll touch on again, what's really interesting is you go into a place and you're like, man, like if they just did this little tweak here, you start seeing, I think I've worked for like 13 hospitals or something. I don't even know. So you get an idea of like what works and what doesn't. And that would help me probably on the management side and things, but you're just like, you have to bite your tongue, because you're like, man, if they just change this little bit. In some hospitals, you can talk to the manager if they ask you, what do you think I could do differently? And you can kind of give your opinion. But a lot of times you're just like, okay, I can't say anything because my goal here is to not disrupt. Like my goal is to fit in, do what they need me to do, and not disrupt. But I think that's difficult for me because I don't know if you know me, like I want to help and I want to give my opinion and I want to whatever I can. And so that's a hard thing for me. Like I have to literally remind myself, like, okay, just like don't say that they need a whiteboard on the wall right there. That would work great. Like little things like that. It's just like, I don't know. But I'm excited to tell you guys a lot of stuff about this in the future.
I think that was a good start.
Definitely.
We can also, there's a whole bunch of stuff we can talk about in terms of, the business side, all that kind of stuff, how you have to interact with, because as you know, doctors aren't the easiest people to work with. So you have to, and radiologists can be even, more, they're a different breed than most doctors, even most of us are.
Right. You guys sit in dark rooms, right? For a reason.
Yeah. So I'll be interested to hear how your experience has been interacting with, I mean, I was a resident, so you've had to interact with residents, maybe I don't know if you've worked with fellows, but and definitely attendings. So I'll be interested to hear about how the dynamic goes with, between you two, because I have my own thoughts and my own experiences with how I have interacted with techs and how my attendings that taught me have interacted with techs. So that's also another thing we can talk about. I'm sure most people want to talk about contract length and pay and all that kind of stuff. So we'll start with the juicy stuff.
Yeah. And I think it's super interesting because, I mean, interacting with, your guys' experience with being a resident and having an attending over you. and interacting, and my experiences working with residents and versus the attendings. And because I've worked with residents, fellows, and attendings, different big teaching hospitals, and then even working with one of the radiologists that I was able to like go on a trip with to a conference to help better the machine. Which I'm not going to tell you what machine it is or what radiologist it was or anything like that. We'll get into that in a different episode. But my relationships that I've been able to develop somehow have been really awesome. So I'm excited to tell you guys more about the pay and all the stuff you want to know, and also some fun stuff that like I had a great time getting to be a part of.
And like you said, if you have questions, you can email him. Was it radtalkwithdg@gmail.com?
Yep. Rad Talk.
He can answer. He'll answer. If it's about traveling, Dennis will be the one that answers. I have no interest or expertise in answering traveling questions because I just don't know anything about it.
Right.
But I think as our last, we'll wrap up the second episode here with a fun little game. I have a couple questions that Dennis and I have a notes thing that we edit together, and we put thoughts and all that kind of stuff in there. And one thing we do is we put some questions, hypotheticals, or just, kind of thought-provoking questions. So I picked out a couple that we're going to answer, and I think it'll give you a little bit of glimpse into, Dennis and I's personality. And I think at least one of the questions will show you how different our personalities are in some aspects. And I kind of cheated because I knew which questions I was going to pick. So I had been thinking about the answers. And Dennis has been maybe thinking about it for like an hour or two. So what I will do is I'll ask the question since I came up with it. I can even go first. That'll give you a little more time.
Yeah, please.
And then we can talk about it. So the first question I want us to answer is, we kind of talked last episode about, the inspiration for wanting to do a podcast. And we probably should have answered this last week, but it came to my mind. You see the big podcast, they always have special guests, So my first question for us is, I have 4, but I want you to give me, a couple people, whoever, that you would want to be our first special guests if, that were ever to happen. So I'll go first. And I think Dennis knows me, so some of these answers will be pretty straightforward, but there's one that I don't think he's ready for. So the first one is the most straightforward and the one I think you would expect. I have, growing up, I was a big wrestling fan, right? I think I told you this. I have a tattoo, the only, I guess gag tattoo. I can't think of like what the proper term is, but I have a tattoo for this guy. So my first guest, without a doubt, would be Stone Cold Steve Austin. He's a little old now, but I would love to have had him in his heyday. But even now, I would fanboy if he showed up. I was a huge fan of wrestling and him specifically. I was probably 10 or 11 when you figure out that wrestling is fake, scripted, whatever you want to call it. So I knew what he was doing was an act, but still the fact that he got to go to work, he beat up his boss, he's throwing up middle fingers. I mean, he's cracking beers, he's doing whatever he wants. So I've kind of, me well enough to know that that's kind of how I operate now. I'm not violent towards my boss or anything, but I kind of do what I want when I want, say what I want.
Right.
I'm pretty straightforward, and I think that's modeled after his persona. Right. So he would easily be the first guest. I have so many questions with all his interactions with all the other superstars that he worked with and his life experiences. So he would be first. He's the most predictable. Second one is also predictable since you know me. In the musical world, I'm a huge Blink-182 fan. I have several tattoos of them. That maybe eventually on video I can show you guys. I don't have this set up right now, but they're also a little older. I would love to have them when they were like our age. But still, I would love to have those 3 guys on just because they were a big part of like the music I listened to at like 13, 14, 15. So that sticks with you. I still listen to them to this day. So I think I would be stoked to have those guys, especially Tom is probably the one that would be he's the lead singer. He would be the most fun to have on, I think. Travis is probably the most popular, right? He's the drummer. He's the one, I forget which one, but he married a Kardashian. So he's probably the most mainstream right now, but I still think all 3 of them would be fantastic to have on. A third one would be the one you're not. I'll give you the other one that's kind of predictable. Okay. I'm a 49ers fan. I haven't said where I did my fellowship, but telling you where who this guy is, you'll know why and where I did it and like why I kind of like him on top of the fact that he plays for the 49ers. So the third one would be George Kittle, right? He's currently my favorite player in the NFL. So he's the tight end for the 49ers. He was also a huge wrestling fan growing up. I think he still is. He seems like a pretty straightforward, fun kind of guy to hang out with. I did my fellowship at Iowa. He went to Iowa that's where he played his college football. And now he happens to be on my favorite team in the NFL. So I think between being in the NFL and the fact that he is a huge wrestling fan, I think we would get along extremely well. So he would be the third one. And then the last one you would never guess, but just things I've seen from like YouTube videos and all this other kind of stuff would actually be Post Malone. I have seen several videos of him hanging out with people. Everyone says he's really laid back. He's like a normal kind of guy, likes to have fun. He's also extremely popular. But I've heard his concerts are really good. I've seen clips of his concerts and stuff. So he seems like a really laid back and chill kind of guy. And I'm sure he has some fantastic like stories and life experiences. So I think those are the first four. There's so many other ones I could think of, but those would be the four that I would start with.
Yeah, I think Post Malone, he just had he was with Impractical Jokers too. I watched Impractical Jokers, and he had an episode. He was just like he seemed like a very laid back, unique
for
guy.
Someone that's like just a massive star. Like
right,
when you get to be that good, you kind of have to have an ego, and a lot of them like lose themselves in that ego and become different people. But at least on a surface level, it seems like he hasn't lost that, which I respect. So,
and he's so young still too. Like that's the thing. He's young and he's massive star, and seems like you said, surface level seems like a good dude. That's an interesting one. I think if I was to have people on the podcast, we're going like stars. I think it'd be really cool to have like Pat McAfee, just that personality that I don't know, like I listen to a decent amount of podcasts, but I think having like Pat McAfee, Skip Bayless.
So you want some fire starters.
Skip
Bayless is a fire starter.
I've been watching Skip since he was on Cold Pizza. However long ago.
Yeah. That's a long time ago. Yeah.
When I was a kid, and so I've followed Skip from Cold Pizza to Undisputed now. I think that would be awesome to have him on to listen to.
I think his co-star would be fantastic. I think Shannon would be fantastic. I actually watched some of his podcasts. He's hilarious.
Yeah.
He seems very authentic.
Right. And he's got so many like stuff that he like his grandma or his grandpa and like all these like stories. You're just like, and Shannon Sharp and Sterling Sharp, their story of where they came from, like in the house.
I saw a clip the other day where Shannon said he didn't take a shower in someone's bathroom until he was in the NFL. Like that's how poor they were.
Yeah. Like
which is crazy. That blows my mind.
And now, people who, I mean, Shannon's what, 50 some years
he said
old.
55. Yeah.
He's not that old to have that mind blowing, I think I really like your Stone Cold one. That was also my favorite wrestler. Either Stone Cold, Bret the Hitman Hart. I liked them both. Probably Stone Cold a little bit more. And I see where you kind of get that, that not caring, like I have to do this job. I'm doing the best at my job, whatever it. Like I love that persona. I agree with you. I think I would like to have somebody like.
Give me a musician. Give me one musician you would like, because I think this is where our personality is going to be drastically different. Because you're more of a country, and I can't stand country music. And I have a feeling if you pick a musician, it's going to be a country music musician. I think Morgan Wallen or somebody like that.
It'd be really cool to have Morgan on, but I think I would probably pick Brantley Gilbert.
Okay. I'm vaguely familiar with him.
Yeah. He's not like a superstar. He wrote, I think where he came from, being a drinker and making some poor decisions. And then, he's covered in tattoos.
Yeah.
And so, it's what I figured his music is country, but it's more of a rock side of country.
Yeah.
And so I think, and I like country, but I also liked rock. And so I think, I followed him from the beginning of his career to where he's at now with his, family life. And I think him would be able to tell a lot of stories, and it'd be a lot of cool stuff. I actually went on a cruise ship. My only cruise I've ever gone on was a country music cruise ship where he was the headliner, and so that was kind of cool. But yeah, I'd probably, Brantley, Morgan Wallen, Luke Combs. Those are my kind of guys. I know that's not your kind of dudes.
All right, then give me. So we got Pat, we got Skip, we got Brantley Gilbert. Give me one athlete. If you're gonna pick an athlete, who are you gonna pick?
Man, oh man.
You're a Browns fan, so there's not much to choose from.
No, there's not. I think athlete, I think Giannis has got a great personality. I'd go basketball.
Giannis would be a good one.
Yeah, Giannis would be really cool. I think Luka would be really cool because he's from another country and he's so popular at different places. Trying to think who. I mean, LeBron would be really cool. I think LeBron would be cool just because when I was in high school, my high school actually played against his high school in the Final Four.
You got smoked, I'm sure.
Yeah, we were on Sports Center throwing up some dunks and stuff like that. Yeah. And so to have him on, because I actually still kept the pamphlet book that you get, like you pay whatever $5 or whatever it is for that day's game. And so it has like all of the high school players from all the teams that were competing in the tournament and stuff. And so like I have LeBron, so I'd like love to have him like sign that or something one day.
Have him autograph it.
Yeah, I saw my ticket stub from that game as well. I held on to that, yeah. And so I think that would be cool. 2 hometown guys just hanging out. I think those would probably be where I would go.
Yeah, that's fair. I'm trying to think. I think Shannon probably would have been my 5th. Like if I had to give you a number, I want people that are like who I perceive to be like authentic and real and like are going to give me real answers and not. I don't want scripted answers. I also wouldn't want to like deal with like a whole bunch of red tape, oh, you have to go through this guy who then goes through this guy who then contacts the person, or, I have to give you the questions ahead of time to like, so you can rehearse and practice. I want someone that's just going to like show up, answer, we're going to hang out for an hour or whatever it is. If I drink beer, maybe we crack a beer, but
which is also I think that's something interesting we can get into, Gage is making his life. So I think that's an interesting thing. But yeah, I think this is a great time to wrap up the episode here. I hope everybody enjoyed this. Please, shoot out to our social medias. I know
we're on Instagram, TikTok, Twitter. It's all rad_talk_DG. I think is that what it is?
Right. Yeah. And wherever you get your podcasts, we're on Spotify, we're on Apple Podcasts, we're on Podbean.
Yeah.
So hit us up. And we look forward to talking to you guys again, hopefully next week.